Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this Thursday edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko. On the show tonight, in defense of democracy, struggle veterans are at it, ready to show politicians what needs to be done to turn the nation's fortunes around. But is anyone listening? We speak to representatives of some of the leading organizations behind this new initiative, which was introduced today in Johannesburg. But first, we bring you the latest on Diepsloot, north of Johannesburg, where relative calm has been restored after clashes between the police and residents. Another life was lost overnight after a person was allegedly stoned and set alight. The Watchdog starts now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has weighed in on the situation in Diepsloot, north of Johannesburg. This is where residents and the police clashed yesterday and stun grenades were fired. At least one person has since died. A mob demanding to see Zimbabwean national Elvis Nyati's passport is believed to have killed him. Ramaphosa says criminality will not be condoned.
Well, it's understood that the mob arrived here at Elvis's home at 10 o'clock last night, shouting, "Give us your passports." And then he was dragged from here, and that was the last time that his wife saw him. The scenes that you're about to see, quite graphic. This is the place where the man was a satellite and subsequently died. We've been told that this happened towards the early hours of this morning. Nomsa says she's very hurt. They've killed him. She says she was told by his relative that they set him alight and he passed on. She says she has no strength. Even the 200 rands he used to make looked after their kids. She says he died for nothing. Another eyewitness, who is Elvis's former classmate, describes what he saw. He says he went to school with Elvis. They were watching TV and they heard a knock. People were demanding to see their passports. He says he was searched for weapons, but then they left. And then he saw Elvis covered in blood. Neighbors too describe how they were asked to identify Elvis's lifeless body. He says police came knocking on his door and asked him how can he sleep, yet there are loud noises outside. They then asked him to identify the body outside, and he said he does not know the deceased. The police minister visiting the crime scene, and this is where Elvis Nyati met his last moments, accompanied here by Fani Masimula, who is the police commissioner.
There's no situation out of control.
Someone has died, police commissioner. Is it not?
Yes, the fact that there is somebody who died does not mean the situation is out of control. We have deployment in this area, there are police, and we have made more than 24 arrests of illegal people, immigrants, undocumented people that are in the area. So it's not to say the situation is out of control. No, we are still managing the situation. There's basically is a manageable situation.
Unfortunate thing happened here where we lost the life. The police, I'm sure they will pursue that and be able to find the culprits. We're having senior detectives here who has put quite a top team to pursue this, but not only this and other cases that have taken place here at Diepsloot, so that we're able to reduce the criminality, especially the murders, because we are able to collect those. If we don't arrest these people, crime will continue.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has condemned the killing.
The minister was there yesterday and he helped to calm the situation. We are continuing to keep a very close eye and also engaging with various members of the community, because we don't want that situation to turn into an ugly one. So we're consulting on all sides, people who live there in Diepsloot, and also listening very closely to their concerns. But we will not condone any criminality. Any form of criminality which results in the death of anyone is not acceptable, and we will take action to deal with it.
Cele will be back here in Diepsloot tomorrow. Crisalda Lewis, SABC News in Diepsloot.
So what's going to happen between now and the time the police top brass return to Diepsloot, and how far have investigations gone into what actually happened to Elvis Sithole, who died wee hours of this morning? Let's get an update now from Colonel Atlenda Mate from the South African Police Service. Good evening, Colonel. Thanks very much for your time this evening. Let's start with what the SAPS has done or put in place this afternoon, overnight, going into tomorrow. What have you done as SAPS to try and make sure that the situation is contained?
Well, a very good evening to you, viewer, and to your viewers. Since violence erupted in Diepsloot, the management, led by the Minister of Police, General Cele, have deployed a multidisciplinary approach to restore law and order in the area, to contain the situation and further prevent loss of lives. We can confirm to you that since violence erupted, there has been the loss of life of a male, which happens to be a foreign national from Zimbabwe. But since last week, initially there were reports that there were 7 people that had lost their lives, but we have done our records, and upon investigating, we found that only 5 people. So I can confirm to you that we have additional deployments in the area. We've got more boots on the ground. We have resourced the Diepsloot policing precinct with 16 additional vehicles. I can confirm to you that the situation is relatively calm tonight in Diepsloot as police remain on high alert. Following, like I've indicated, the deployment of specialized units such as your tactical response teams, just to ensure that there is law and order in the area. So I can confirm to you, viewer, that we have increased and heightened police visibility. We have had high-density operations in the area.
Now, the 5 people you say have died since last week, do they include Elvis, who died wee hours of this morning?
Okay. So at this point, police can confirm that according to the Diepsloot SAPS record of reported cases, only 5 murders were reported between Wednesday, the 30th of March, and yesterday. But as of yesterday evening, we had 1 additional death, which brings the total number of people that have died in the Diepsloot area to 6.
Okay. Now, when your statement then goes further to say the murders emanated from separate, unrelated incidents and investigations are still underway to arrest the suspects, what exactly is meant by unrelated incidents?
So what we understand is that since the 30th of March, between the 30th of March and Sunday, 5 people died in separate incidents. So they were unrelated. And we can confirm that the 6th person died yesterday as a result of acts of vigilantism in the area. Hence the increased and reinforcement of deployments in the area just to stabilize the area. And I can confirm to you, Vuyo, that as a South African police service, we are not going to be tolerating any lawlessness. We are calling upon communities in Diepsloot to exercise their right to protest in a responsible manner and refrain from acts of violence which endanger the lives of others. And as a South African police service, we are not going to be afraid to move in to uphold and enforce the law. So we are not going to tolerate any forms of violence and intimidations and so forth. Infringing on others' rights and freedom of movement, as you are well aware that roads were blockaded in the area as people were protesting. That will not be tolerated. Hence, the deployments in the area just to ensure that there is calm and stability is restored in the area of Diepsloot.
Okay. Now, the police minister and the national commissioner were there today. They were there yesterday. And apparently they are going back there tomorrow. To do what exactly this time around?
So, as rightly indicated, we are in response to the Diepsloot community's complaints about crime in the area and the ensuing protests. General Masimula, together with the police minister, have been visiting the area on a daily basis, where they are engaging with community leaders and community structures towards finding a lasting solution that will heighten the community's sense of feeling safe and secure. But most importantly, what General Masimula and General Bekele are going to do is just to monitor progress, to monitor progress on the deployments and the reinforcements in the areas. So they will also monitor if indeed there are high density operations in the area, if indeed our members are out there patrolling the streets, just to ensure that the people of Diepsloot are and feel safe.
And that's where we're going to leave it, Colonel. Thanks very much for your time this evening, Colonel Atlinda Mate, who speaks for the South African Police Service. The Minister and the National Commissioner will be going back to Diepsloot tomorrow. And just one correction, the person who died overnight is Elvis Nyati and not Elvis Sitole, as the police statement said a little earlier. We will, of course, be watching the developments there. Overnight, we do have reporters on the ground, and they will also be there in the morning to bring you the latest from Diepsloot. After the break, we'll speak to struggle veterans representing a range of organizations wanting to introduce change to the country's political system. That discussion coming up in a moment. So go away. Bringing changes. Struggle veterans, academics, church and community organizations have come together to launch an initiative they hope is going to change the country for the better. They gathered in Johannesburg this afternoon to let the media in on what they are busy cooking. Well, on the line to tell us all about it, Advocate Mujanku Gumbi, the Chancellor of the University of Venda, and Reverend Mos Ntla, who is the General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Vuyo.
Good evening, Vuyo.
Well, tell us, if I may start with you, Advocate Gumbi, how these groupings came together and what they, identified as the reason for coming together.
Well, I think about a year ago, a few people, such as Reverend Chikani, Miss Cheryl Karulas, Mavuso Msimang, and others came together and started discussing what civil society should do to really put the country back on track, because it was quite clear that we were going off the rails. You know, as you would remember, whistleblowers were targeted, being killed, and you know, at that time, I think the former President Zuma was just defying the courts left, right, and center. And so, out of concern for the country, they came together, and then, you know, we all joined the effort of civil society to say, what do we do? To just send a message that politics and the responsibility for the country is not the preserve of political parties. It's us as ordinary citizens who really need to make sure that we save our country. So this is what this initiative is about, and it's a year old already. But today we were launching a document for democratic renewal and change, which is a document that is going to be a discussion document that goes countrywide, that leads to a conference in June, where we hope that by then we would have consulted widely about what needs to be done.
Excuse me. We'll talk in a bit about both the document and the conference. But what I wanted to ask you, Reverend, I can't resist this, because one would have thought that in the age of, you know, when a new administration came into being, you know, and promised a change, one would have thought that there would not have been that much of a need for civil society, you know, to organize itself and stand up against what were injustices and wrongs that were being committed by the previous administration.
Correct. That is also something that we were hoping wouldn't happen, because in fact, since 1994, we were hoping none of this, the developments that we've seen in the last while, would happen. But we've been shocked increasingly over the last several years at developments that necessitate for us to begin to do what is the only option open to us, in the sense that when you have political parties failing to do what is expected, when we see the state being captured, when we see the sort of things that have come up in the Zondo Commission happen, we realize that in the end, this democracy was brought about by the combined effort of the people of South Africa as a whole. And in the end, they are the defenders of this democracy. And if we do not facilitate and galvanize the people of this country to rise to this defense of democracy, we will see the deterioration increasingly go from bad to worse. So yes, we weren't expecting to be doing this by this time, 27 years after our democracy. But as we look at other experiments of democratic transitions on our continent and elsewhere, we realize that unless the people themselves take a stand, there is no way in which they will avoid the ugly scenarios that we've often seen, where people are failed by the institutions of governance.
Advocate Kumbi, I mean, you were part, you know, of that panel, expert panel that was put together by the president. And among your findings was the key or central role that the governing party, the ANC, or ANC politics, have actually played in, for lack of a better word, destabilizing the country. And earlier you were saying, or you're talking about why you've realized that, you know, I mean, the future of the country can't just be left to politicians or political parties. But have you been able to, engage with the governing party, given the fact that they are, largely responsible, or their politics is largely responsible for what we've seen, the deterioration we've seen?
I think, first of all, Buyo, let me say that report belongs to the president, so it's no longer my and my colleagues' report. But just generally, I think what we are trying to do is to make sure that, the agency that people have to bring about this change is not lost on them forever. Because there's a way in which 1994 demobilized people. People thought, we have a government, now we can sit back and it will do everything for us. And in many ways, one understands how that happened, because the government wanted to show that it is not the apartheid regime. So to say we are here now, we will make sure that we give you houses, we give you water, electricity, and all of that. So it's understandable. But that message went, I think, in my view, a little too far in demobilizing people of their agency. And for instance, it led to a period where we were told that a swimming pool is a fire pool, and the whole, a whole number of parliamentary members of parliament agreed with that view and defended it and made videos of it and all of that. So we are really saying that whoever is in power, we must always remember that power is public power. They exercise it because we've allowed them to do that. And therefore, it's a power that we can always take back as citizens and decide how it should be exercised in our interest. We can never have this system where you've just shown a video on Diepsloot. There's no way that people should live like that. It's just unacceptable. Those living conditions are unacceptable. And then when you look at the money that has been wasted on corruption, the money that continues to be wasted on all sorts of things, you really say to yourself, it's time that we stood up as ordinary people to say, not in our names.
Reverend, let's talk a bit about the document that you put on the table, which of course will be discussed in detail at the conference that you are planning to have in June. What in essence does this document seek to do?
What it seeks to do, is to catalyze a national conversation around what is happening to us as a society, and hoping to foster a sense in the population that our democracy is what we make of it. We are at a juncture in our journey as a democracy where a lot of things have gone wrong. I think not any of us as South Africans, looking back at 1994 and at the high hopes we had, would say that they are happy with the things as they are. So the document seeks to say that there are serious threats to our constitutional democracy. And it outlines some of those threats that we discern. And when I say we, it's a discussion paper that has taken on board different perspectives from different formations and around the country. We hope to continue that process so that it becomes a document that is owned by South African in terms of its analysis of what's the problem and in terms of identifying what possible solutions there may be. And so our hope is that the people will arrive at a conference in June having at least studied some of the tendencies and the trends that are there in society, and also hopefully have applied their minds about what kind of solutions we'd like to see emerge, what kind of contributions as South Africans. And at this point, we say that there is no Messiah who will come from elsewhere to save the country. The people are the leadership that they've been waiting for. There's no one else is coming to rescue us. So it is inculcating or seeks to inculcate a sense of active citizenry where everybody takes ownership of this democracy, defends it, and understands that unless all of us are in it together, we will all regret the outcome going forward. So that's in essence what the document seeks to do.
Of course, advocates, I mean, whether our constitutional democracy is under threat isn't the only question that this document asks. There are several others, like, do you think regular, free and fair elections are important? Beyond voting, what more must be done to ensure service delivery to people? Is South Africa on the road to becoming a failing state? Just how, like in the process of arriving at these questions, what did you have to do, or what did you, how did you canvass these ideas or these questions that you have put or thrown into this document?
Well, some of those ideas came from the ground, Vuyo. And as Reverend Nhla says, you just have to look around you. You know, there is no way that we can say that things are okay. So most of those questions were thrown up from the ground, issues of just as an example, climate change, issues of corruption, issues of protection of whistleblowers, issues of an electoral system, whether we elect our president directly, though the court has ruled on that to say anyone can run for office. So most of them came up from the ground, and we just captured them in a document. But there has been some interaction also with communities, especially in Limpopo. And we're going to continue with those consultations because this is a discussion document. And just canvass people's votes, canvass people's ideas as they interact with the document about what else do they think is important. So it's not just our own views. These views come from the ground already because, we can't impose upon ourselves the preserve, as I've said, to speak on behalf of the people of South Africa. These come from the ground. That's how we pick them.
Another key question, apart from what are the threats and those other questions that I spoke about just now. One other question that the document talks about is what should be done. Reverend?
Yeah, that's correct. It obviously we can't end at an analysis of our appalling situation. We hope that the conference that will gather is to say what is it that we are to do as the people of this country, given what we see in the report of the State Capture Commission, given what we see in the streets. You've just shown a very horrific picture of a Zimbabwean who was killed in Diepsloot. All of this xenophobia that has become almost something that trends in our country. And you see ordinary people almost feeling like it's a solution that they can use to solve what they see as their problems. Now, when you hear the story that that person actually was killed for 200 rands, you realize that there is a lot that is wrong in this society. Not only, it's one thing to say there's policy failures, it's another thing to say that ordinary people who would do that thing, there's something that has happened to us as a people. And we are hoping that after analyzing all of these problems, we will then together own not only the problem, but the solution. And we don't want to preempt how the solution will look like. There have been voices that say the Constitution, for example, would have to be massaged a little bit to accommodate the growing aspirations that don't seem, for some reason, to be accommodated. All of these will be ventilated, but we hope to come away from that conference with a sense of clarity around the campaign itself, what character it should take going forward, the participation of people from across the country, how that should be facilitated so that it becomes a truly people's movement. Because that is a South African story. This country was set free in that way. There wasn't an elitist group of people who ended apartheid. It was the people as a whole. And so we'd like to activate that sense of public commitment to the solution, because we think it's going to be a long haul where all of us must be in it together.
Advocates, politics it can be a rough game, and times it can be competitive, and that there may well be nothing wrong with that, with competition. But often competition comes with selfishness. One wonders whether you think political parties are actually ready, willing, and able to embrace something like this. And I'm asking this against a backdrop, of a sense one is getting, certainly among opposition parties, that the Goliath, that is the ANC, they seem to be convinced more than ever before right now that the ANC can be defeated. And that may just introduce, the kind of politics that will actually force people, because they can smell the blood. And on the other hand, you have an ANC that believes that perhaps this is the last chance that they have to rebuild and form a stronger party. And a combination, of those things may just make it difficult, if not impossible, for an initiative like this to actually gain traction.
I think all the more reasons that we must have this initiative, Buyo, because political parties tend to veer towards self-preservation. As you say, they want to stay in power, others want to come into power. And in the process, the reason why they have that public power gets forgotten, which is us, your ordinary people who want better health care, who want well-running schools, good roads, transport system. And that falls by the wayside. So a campaign such as Defend Our Democracy really brings the people to the center of those debates. You are absolutely correct that people are like, stop bothering us. We are just about to nail the ANC in 2024. And others are, the ANC is like, just leave us, we are in a process of renewal so that we can take 2024. But each is looking at themselves, and in that process, they really forget why we need why they need to be in power. You know, they are really, some of them are just striking some deals to say, if we can just get this province and that province and put it together, or if we can get this coalition and put it together, then we're in power. So it's really sad. It's sad, the state of our politics in the country. That state really bothers most of us, and it should bother many people in the country. So we are here to say, whoever, whether it's a coalition that comes into power, whether it's a currently ruling party, you know, we want to hold you accountable. There's a reason why you are there. But the last thing I would say, as Reverend says, we also want to say to South Africans that, you know, it's time for us to regain our humanity and to remember that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. You know, our humanity towards one another. That's the basis of a society that lives in peace, and that we can only prosper from that. So it's important not to forget the person, the individuals, and therefore the society that we live in as well.
Reverend, your thoughts on the same question I just asked Advocate Gumbi again, because I mean, every time you listen, in particular to opposition parties, they boast about the fact that, you know, the November 1 local government election, you know, cut the ANC to size, so to speak, and they are keen to capitalize on that going into the national elections.
Correct. I think that is the worry, that there appears to be very little understanding among political parties. In fact, that all of them, unless they understand the centrality of the people of South Africa in terms of what should be their policies and their practice, they will all fall into the same trap. I think what we have learned over the last 27 years is that power has done to people who in past years were very revolutionary, people who in past years would sacrifice their lives for you, people who would go to prison for you, people who would die for you. Once those people came to power, there's something that happened to them. And they have become askaris. You know, we used to have askaris in the past who just turned, and you don't, for whatever pressure that was brought to them, they turned and became vicious enemies of the people. And that's what we're seeing. And we insist that it is not even to say that it is the one party that is guilty of this. To the degree that we've seen coalition parties and even opposition parties take responsibility for certain parts of government and provinces and local communities, I think that tendency has reared its ugly head of corruption and so on. So at the end of the day, I think the lesson is that the people of South Africa should not put their confidence completely in those who hold office and then demobilize themselves. The idea is that all of those power holders ought to be held to account across the length and breadth of this country, every municipality, every council, every school, every hospital. Unless there's public participation, that holds those in power accountable. The graft, the tendency to corruption will continue unabated. So we would do well to really accept the historic mission of how to renew this democracy, how to keep it accountable to the people, and how to be, regardless of race, religion, regardless of who is in power, which political party, the vigilance of South African people ought to be the same. We hope, obviously, that with every election, you'll have a better crop of leadership, but we can't entirely relax and say, well, there are nicer people who seem to know what they're doing.
Advocate, I'm looking at some of, the sectoral speakers you had today. South African Council of Churches, universities, South Africa Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, several, social justice activists. Are there other groupings beyond these ones that you're looking at bringing on board, at this envisaged conference?
Absolutely, Vuyo. We've sent word out to as many NGOs as we can, in particular organizations that work in the what we call the grassroots, and the churches have been very helpful with the campaign reaching grassroots activists and members. And this is just the beginning of the consultative process. We are going to have mediated and facilitated conferences in different regions and different provinces, because this is supposed to be a movement of the people, because we can't call ourselves a democracy unless the democracy works for the majority of the people. And the only way we can do that is to involve the people in participating in their own lives and bettering their own lives. So we are reaching out to all sectors, women, youth, and activists, and the media, to try and engage, not only with the document, but with the ideas behind the document, and to tell us what that means for their own empowerment. As things stand now, the majority of the people are outside. They are so dislocated from the Constitution. We have a wonderful Constitution, but it's one that is imposed onto such an unequal society that it bears no relevance to the majority of our people. So it's important for us to re-engage the South African people, not our people, the South African people, so that they re-engage with what this means. And we may come out with something different, as Reverend Nhla says. We may come up with a different constitutional model that responds better to the needs of South African people. So we are reaching out to everyone, and we're encouraging everyone to please also reach out to us.
And I'm also looking, Reverend, at some of the things you're going to need, very specialized skills, people who are going to have to debunk some myths about this initiative, who must call out fake news and manipulation of narratives. You're talking about specialized task teams that should be established to deal with specific aspects of this initiative. Where are you going to source those? Where are you going to get the resources?
Yeah, thank you. I think that one of the things with regard to this country is that there's so much talent, so much the skills that among the people of this country, there's so much in abundance, which begs the question, why is that not tapped into? Why is it that we are often left with leadership in very influential, high-stake positions in government who lack the necessary skills? It's always a problem. One would think that there are no skills in this country, but there are. And in the mobilization of this campaign, we've just been amazed by the talent, the resourcefulness across the board, from civil society to the academia, to trade unions, civil society, faith groups, the legal profession. All manner of people have put up their hand and say, can I help? Can I bring in the necessary resources that can help push the campaign forward? And so it's been amazing to watch the energy that has been galvanized by the campaign. And so we are quite confident that all of those commissions that will need to be driven at the conference will have more than enough people with the necessary talent who will actually help us come away from the conference with some clarity about where we want to take the campaign, and that we can tap into the best brains that our country has. And might just add this, that part of why we did this media launch today is to raise the number of people who think about these things, proactively, who can come along and become part of this conference, so that every skill that is available across the length and breadth of this country, from every tribe, every race, everyone, all of us as South Africans, and we hope to be able to tap into that.
Let me thank both of you for your time this evening. Reverend Mosntla, who is the General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance, and Advocate Mujanku Gumbi, who is the Chancellor of the University of Venda, taking us through that discussion paper, which they launched today in preparation for that conference for democratic renewal and change that is scheduled for June this year, which these organizations, NGOs, South African Council of Churches, universities, South Africa, and numerous others hope is going to be a game changer. And that's our program for this evening. Do join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.